Okay, so I'm gonna get started then. All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to FOSS Point. Welcome to the second episode of FOSS Point. And in case you guys don't know already, this is a weekly live stream that I do, covering various kinds of open source technology, open source software, and anything else that is freely available. That's the niche that I have tried to focus on, and this is mainly targeted at anyone who wants to get started with tech. As in, let us say it could be a first year who just joined college and really wants to look around, or maybe you have really enjoyed your first year. In your second year, you're thinking that you have to get a bit more serious. So in all these cases, it's great to it's never late, and this is targeted at the basic audience. So don't think that this is going to be too advanced for you. Also, if you have not subscribed already, please do subscribe and invite your friends also to join the community. If you haven't joined already, that gives you a voice in what I present here, so that you can suggest and tell me what to cover, and I'll try my best to cover that. So moving on to the subject of subject that we are going to cover today, that is Git and GitHub. So what we covered last week was what is open source software. So the keyword in that being source. So when we talk about source, it usually means the source code, the code that drives your application. And this code usually, I mean, especially in open source, it might not always be one person who is writing the source code. I mean, by all means, there are cases where a single person writes the code and then makes the source code public, and it is legit an open source project. But in most cases, open source is community driven, and there's gonna be more than one people working behind it. And in all such cases, Git is one technology that has proven itself there. So let's not, without further ado, let's get started with what we are going to cover today. All right. So why use Git and why use GitHub? Before that, let me just give you a bit of history of Git. And Git was also created by Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux that we briefly covered last week. So he is a really brilliant mind who came up with his own flavor of Unix and called it Linux. So Linus is Unix, which became Linux. Actually, it was a friend of his who gave the name. But nonetheless, the name stuck, and as he open sourced it, he needed some way to manage it. He needed to manage the project. He needed a way to handle the changes that were being made to the source code, handle the way that contributions were being made to the source code. So for all of this, he created a technology stack called Git. So Git quickly became adopted by a lot of tech giants of the world, and especially because of its usefulness and utility in agile software development, it really proved its mettle there. So that is basically the history of Git. Now the reason why it is important to use Git. Now, a lot of people, when they have written some kind of code, whether it be for a basic website that you did in school, or whether it be some kind of hello world program, in all cases, it would have been like you started off with a hello world program, you made some changes, and then you did something, and then you made a couple more changes, you made a few additions, you made a few deletions, and it was all working well and good. Then you made that one change that completely broke your application, and you hit Control Z and you run it again. The bug persists. Again you hit Control Z, you undo it, and still the bug persists. Now what can you do about it? There is I mean, by all means, your source code is more scrambled than a French egg or French omelette or whatever, and debugging it is a real pain. So what would have been a great case? It would be better if you kept hitting save as into a different folder, so that you had checkpoints, you had stable builds that you could keep referring to. And in all these cases, it is still inefficient, because it is a very manual versioning system, and you're gonna end up with a tree of files. Like, when you just want to open a project directory, you don't want to see the hundreds of versions that came through, right? But then it's always good to go back and refer. So Git does that for you with its version history system. So say you're writing something, you're writing a piece of code, and maybe 1 hour in, you come up with, you achieve your initial objectives, or at least you've set up the environment right. What you do is you do a git commit. So that is like creating a checkpoint. Now the reason why you have to create this checkpoint is so that it is labeled, it is tagged. So later, maybe 2 months down the line, when you come and refer to it, you can see that label and identify that what that particular commit consists, and you can easily roll back to it. So say at the end of 1 hour you made one commit, and another 10 minutes later you tried something else, and then another half an hour later you tried something else, and then came that one feature, that one line of code or one semicolon that you put accidentally, that completely broke your code. Now you could try Control Z and then save it a couple of times, but then that's just normal debugging, right? That might not always work. So what can you do? Now here you have the option of having a checkpoint. All you have to do is go back in your history, go back to that checkpoint, restore it, and then you're back and good to go. Then incrementally bring back the changes that you had made to figure out where it actually went wrong. So that is version history for you. So this need not apply entirely for Git. There are a lot of version control software. Git is just something that has properly proved its mettle here. Then you have the option of then you have the reason of collaboration. So this stands more for GitHub also, because that has become the go-to platform for open source collaboration. And the thing being that when you have an open source project, if you just put it out public, as in a couple of my projects also, if you go to github.com/technicus, I'll link my personal GitHub in the comment section down below after the stream. Right now it just has the community links. So if you go there, you can see all of the projects that are available publicly. So it allows us to share. Also, if you're going for hackathons, if you want to share the code with the organizers, they will most certainly ask you to share your GitHub repository, because it's easy for them to just download it, run it, and you can also see that version history, how you have worked through and through the process of development, whether it was just a one huge commit or incremental commits, or we will see at best practices. So collaboration is a huge thing. So say I write a piece of code and then push it to Syed, or Yash, or anyone, any of my fellow teammates. They can easily clone it meaning make a copy or download it in simple terms, make their own changes, make their own commits, and then push it back up to GitHub, and then I can monitor that. I can do my own changes parallelly and then push it back. So it adds a certain degree of flexibility in collaboration, in that it makes it really convenient for developers. It really makes a lot of difference for the teams as such to be able to collaborate at such a rate. So that is collaboration. Then comes agility. Now, what is agility? Going from ideation to production is basically agility. So agile development means that is production focused. You want to get, basically in today's industry, time to market is very important. Time to market is the most important thing. So you could, like, even in the 19th century and 20th century, people assume that we had reached the flat line of ideas. But then the thing is, with the advancing technology, everyone is having a lot of ideas, and by all means, the idea that you might have had and you think is completely novel, somebody else could have possibly had a similar idea. So who wins? The person who brings it to market wins first. Market first wins. Sorry, I misspoke there. So it's all about getting it to production first. So that is agility. So Git and GitHub enables agility. It allows the it makes your workflow more efficient, so that you have a very agile production cycle, and you don't waste a lot of time with unnecessary debugging and things as such. Then on a related note comes project management. So if you have an open source project, people can raise, if they want to request a feature, they can always have feature requests. Or if there's something wrong with your code, they can raise an issue on GitHub. We will see all that later. So those are a couple of the reasons why we need GitHub. Okay, so now we are done with why we need this. Let's talk about Git as such. Now, Git, as I said earlier, is a content tracker system. So it keeps you in check as a developer, you could say, and it is your saving grace in a lot of times when features might break. So in those cases, like as you are working, you do Git commits, and you push your code to a remote Git repository, and Git is responsible for taking your code and then finding what has changed between the versions, storing those changes as these things called hashes, and pushing them into remote repositories, or maybe even in a repository on your own system. So that is basically what Git does. It is the technology, it is the underlying version control technology of GitHub. Now I've talked about GitHub for so long. The reason why I've talked for GitHub so long is that it is the biggest player. It is a driving force of open source. So anytime you talk about open source, say later I'll show you a software called Streamlabs OBS, or OBS as such. You go to the website, the first thing that they say is that our software is open source. View source on GitHub. So that one line justifies it all. It has become the go-to standard for open sourcing your software. So in that case, it is very relevant that we cover GitHub, and I think we briefly saw GitHub in the last stream. Nonetheless, we, depending on the audience, I'll see and I'll show you how to set up your own GitHub account. So for those ECE peeps in the stream, this is relevant for you also. In some cases, you might need to take a plugin or maybe some kind of an add-on from GitHub, and it is always, I mean, who are we kidding? Half of the EC placements happen in IT, right? So you cannot survive without this, and a GitHub account really reflects on your work, and it really it becomes a very easy portfolio for your coding talent or anything like that, basically. So let us see. Okay, another thing that is on screen is Bitbucket. So Bitbucket is something that uses Git. It is a versioning system, it is a content tracking system, but what it is that it is by a company called Atlassian. GitHub was recently acquired by Microsoft. Bitbucket is a software offering by Atlassian. It has a free tier, but then it is mostly enterprise oriented and generally closed source. People do use it for open source, but it is an enterprise grade solution, and you can't open source everything, right? Companies would go broke if they open source their proprietary tech also. So in those cases, sometimes when they need an enterprise grade Git versioning system and they don't want to set it up on their own servers, they'll use something called like Bitbucket. And Atlassian is a really great company when it comes to DevOps and things as such. So they have this really stable offering. So Atlassian is also the company that runs the Trello app. They are the owners of the Trello app. Trello is the Kanban task manager kind of thing that a lot of people use. Even I use it to some degree. Switching over to this thing called Notion, but then that's the subject for another video. Moving on to GitHub. So GitHub, as the name suggests, is a hub for Git. So it is a cloud platform, you could say, and it makes it really easy for anyone to use the Git versioning system, as in anyone can sign up for an account, and anyone can use the technology of Git, and you can easily set up versioning for your for your projects, and as you write some code, you can keep pushing it to GitHub, so in case your system crashes or your system catches fire because of your complex machine learning models or whatever, your code is still safe on the cloud. And also it helps a lot with collaboration and project management and all those things. So we'll see that, and then I hope I'll show you the relevance of GitHub a bit more there. And they are hardcore FOSS supporters. So what they do is they also sponsor a lot of projects. They fund a lot of projects. They make their enterprise grade platform free for a lot of companies that are just getting started, open source. Then they also have a great student program. So anyone with an edu email address, so like we have srmist.edu. So similarly, you can use your edu address to get the GitHub student pack. There are a lot of free goodies there, free software licenses, a lot of free tools that you can use, and just a lot of great stuff there. And they do really great things. And they recently got acquired by Microsoft. That was a bit of a concern for a lot of people, because shortly after Microsoft acquired NPM also. So people were freaking out, is Microsoft off to dominate the entire tech world or open source world or whatnot? So I think yeah. All right, so let's move on to some interesting stuff. Yeah, I think you guys have heard enough of me droning on. Before that, let's just look at the chat section.